What about like a moist towelette?
I've never said that either.
What? You don't use moist
You have
towelette?
never said moist towelette?
No.
Have you never eaten ribs before?
I
Said, hey, pass me one of those moist towelettes.
You know, I
wipe off
one
my
of
grubby
those
fingies.
wipies.
Yeah,
Let me get one
I
of
was
those
saying,
wipies.
isn't it called like wipies or something? Or
I need a
was a
wipey for my
joke.
fingy.
I need an adult wipey.
An adult wipey.
You're listening to The Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean, American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Cool. Welcome back to the Janchi Show, everybody. We are here and excited to be here because it's interview week. So really, really excited about that. I am one of your hosts, KJ, chilling in a car that is getting hotter by the minute. Nathan, Patrick.
Roll down the window.
Doing good.
Can't.
I'm sitting in my AC house.
Yeah, I know.
don't
I was
have
gonna say
the
I'm
heat or
sitting in the
air on.
comfort of my home.
I have it neutral air right now because it's neutral outside.
Nice. Well, Patrick, for all of our new listeners, will you briefly explain what the Janchi Show is, why we call ourselves the Janchi Show, and what they can expect this episode?
Absolutely, I can tell them all of those things. We are the Janchi Show. What we do here is we're all 3 Korean American adoptees, and we talk about those experiences together. And sometimes we have somebody on, like we do this week. We call ourselves the Janchi Show because Janchi in Korean means to celebrate, to feast, to come together, and share in good times and recollections. And that's what we do. We celebrate our our shared Korean heritages, our culture, as well as what we do in the adoptee community. My cat is trying to get on my lap right now. But yeah, that's what we
also
do.
a part of the
Your cat
definition
wants
of
the
the
Janchi.
Show.
That's why.
Cat wants the Janchi. But this week we have a really fantastic interview lined up. We have Chris McLaughlin on the show. He's been following us for a while, but we've met him out in LA. First time I did not realize who it was, and then I realized at the end of the interview who it was that's been following me on Instagram for a long time. But Chris gets really vulnerable with us. He shares about growing up in Arizona and then going to Los Angeles. But we really dive deep into his search for his first family and everything that spins out of that. It's really, really powerful. I can't wait for you guys to hear the interview. I know KJ is getting hotter by the second, so I don't know if we're talking about anything else. KJ, is there anything you want to share before we get to the interview?
Well, I guess just really briefly, I listened to another podcast, which I know I'm just going to name drop this one. It's called The Stacks Podcast. It's about books. But Nicole Chung was on it talking about her book, All You Can Ever Know. And then they actually had an interview with an adoptive parent or a parent who had adopted talking about the book. So I thought that was really interesting. And I haven't read the book, but actually listening to them chat about that and listening to the author talk about that with the host I was like, oh man, I should really check this out. So that was really exciting to me.
It's funny that you
so I
say
just wanted
that.
to say that.
I just sat in last night a talk with Nicole Chung about her book.
That's awesome.
Put on through also known as Organization. It was really great. Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, and so it was just interesting because, like in the series of episodes, Tracy interviews the person that she's talking about the book with, so that you can like understand their perspective and where they're coming from. So it was interesting, like hearing that, and then hearing Nicole talk about her book, and then hearing Tracy and the guest talk about All You Can Ever Know, because it was like adoptee, mixed race host, and adoptive parent. So there was like a lot of intersectionality all happening, certainly, all women. But so it was just like, I'm very used to having been on the journey of adoption and reckoning with that identity, hearing like, we need more adoptee voices. And so like hearing a parent and an adoptee and somebody who doesn't really know that much about adoption was just really interesting. So I thought that was really cool. Also, as it relates to this episode, Nathan, I know that Chris's story had a really profound impact on you, and you wanted to tell your story more. And I don't think we ever talked about this on or off air, but I'm just curious, like, how that process was for you diving back into the whirlwind that was your trip to Korea and meeting your own parents, going back and actually reflecting and giving yourself time to process that. And then sharing that with the world.
Yeah, I know his story definitely had some similarities to mine, and I remember saying that even in the interview that I related to a lot of what he was saying. However, his was more about his biological parents. My parents had actually already passed away, so I only met my biological siblings when I went over. So, but it was kind of one of those things that definitely brought back some memories, and the constant communication back and forth, although tough with translation, is still been very great, and I really appreciate everything that that has happened in the last 4 or 5 years, and I think Chris is as well. So,
well, I think, and too, wasn't that right after we had met that when we came back that you put out kind of a recap story on your Instagram, diving even deeper than I think we did on the episode about your experience there. I thought that was really cool. What was the feedback like from that when you did that?
That was great. I mean, I got a lot of people messaging me about it, and other people who had said that they hadn't heard that much information. And on top of that, I added more photos that I'd never released before.
Oh, is that like important to you? Is it like a thing that you do?
Just a few photos, I guess. It's speaks 1,000 words. But yeah, so it was kind of one of those things that I wanted to have more. I guess just more of my story out there, and so that I felt like it was a good time for that. So.
Well, I mean, I think that's a perfect segue into our interview with Chris. So without further ado, here we go.
Take us there.
Take us to the interview.
I'm not going to sing.
I'm leaving that in.
Welcome back to the Janchi Show. We are here with another wonderful interview with Chris McLaughlin. Chris? I know we just saw you, it feels like, but thank you so much for being here. We're back. It's good to have you on the show for sure.
Guys, it's really great to be back. I mean,
long time listener, first time caller.
Long time, first time.
I was telling somebody the other day about this. Like, podcasts are such like an intimate form of, media where you have these voices in your head and you truly feel like these podcast hosts like personally, that you can call them anytime. And before I met you, that's creepily how I thought of you guys. So to be able to meet you and in person and, talk with you and share barbecue and soju was just, it was truly like the highlight of like the last year and a half or two.
I mean, you melded right in with our whole group. I mean, from having not engaged with you directly to immediately meeting you right as the show was getting ready to start, to sitting at dinner and you guys, I remember you and my sister were just having great conversation, and I was just like, this guy has been here the entire year that we've been doing this. Like, he's just been here with us. And I think that was the most amazing thing. I'm getting ready to sneeze is why I got really weird right there.
It's been a fantastic journey. I mean, just hearing your stories and your exploration into like Korean identity, and to go on that journey with you and hear how you're articulating it and just coming to terms and being in touch with that, and to go on it at the same time with you it's just been a really amazing experience. So thank you.
Wow. No, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the show, guys. Thank you so much for coming.
Yep, that was our interview with Chris, where we actually paid him money. How would you like to receive that payment? Was that just PayPal or Venmo?
Korean snacks, please.
Yeah, I like it. It's good.
Well, Chris, I know you have come along with our journeys and listened to the people that we've interviewed, but we don't know much of your story. Except for the bits that we did talk to you at the live show. So for our listeners, tell us a little bit about your adoption story, and as detailed or as little as you'd like.
Yeah, I was adopted when I was 20 months old in 1978. So I was born in Busan. My birth certificate actually said Seoul, but born in Busan, and adopted to two Caucasian parents living in Mansfield, Ohio. And showed up. I just talked to my parents about this. They said it was like one of the worst blizzards in like decades. The whole family came to the airport. They picked me up. We got photos of like my dad holding me with an afro. It wasn't a big deal for white dudes to have afros back then. And then
The
they all
blowout,
took
right?
me.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, they all
Blowout.
took me home, and we had a big party. I guess a Janchi, if you will.
Nice.
We lived there.
I
for,
will.
Oh, thank you very much. I will.
I
We
will
lived-
say Janchi.
We lived there for a little bit, but then we moved to Arizona like later that year, and Arizona is where I call home. That's where I grew up. Where I went to high school and college, so that is definitely home for me. What else? I've got one adopted sister. The middle sister is adopted. She's biracial. My youngest sister is actually biological to my parents, and I've heard that happens a lot, where parents couldn't have children, adopted a couple, and then 10 years later, she had her own. My mom had her own kids. So that was pretty cool. But it was interesting, and again, it's so validating to hear this from other guests that you've had on the show. That like growing up, I was the only Asian in all of my classes, and sometimes in the entire school. Never had any Asian classmates or in fact friends for that matter. And I remember my parents trying to introduce me to Asian culture. Through books, or my mom, even like back in the day, she used to buy those chunking canned Asian meals, and we would do stir fries.
I don't know if I had that. I saw KJ's face, and my face went similar direction. I wasn't sure.
I had him. I
What was
always,
it?
Eyebrow raised.
What was
I
it?
always recall the water chestnuts.
Yes.
Oh, I did
Yeah.
water chestnuts.
The best part. The
Yeah.
I
best
like water
part.
chestnuts.
I always
Ugh,
love those
the
little
best
crunchy
part?
things.
No,
Yeah, they're like
gross.
crunchy. And,
Ugh.
You don't like water chestnuts?
I do not. That's the worst part of stir fry veggies.
wow, you and my wife both
Interesting.
agree on that one then.
Yeah.
Well, you're
not
going to be
a fan.
upset at the wedding dinner.
Oh, man.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm
Spoiler
very good
alert.
at eating round food I don't like.
All right.
I'll just, like,
I'm gonna be
Patrick,
staring
I
at your
got
plate.
some food for you. Just
I'm going to bust your table. I'm going to bust your table just to check your plate.
amazing.
All
Did
right, sorry.
Arizona-
What part of Arizona did you grow up in?
When I was in elementary school, we bounced around Chandler, Tempe, Phoenix area. And then when I went to junior high and high school, we moved down to Douglas, Arizona. It's on the border of Mexico. It's famous for a drug tunnel where I think the Sinaloa cartel used to ship drugs from Agua Prieta down to over to Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
but-
made me
Claim
think
to
of like
fame.
Fast and Furious.
It's a
Hearing
small
about
town.
Arizona just makes me think of The Good Place and also my family, which is a weird combination to have happen in my brain hole. So, yeah. All right. I just like to know.
They're from Arizona?
Yeah, my mom's side of the family is all generally in Arizona. So I grew up going to Arizona like during Christmas to visit my grandparents in the Phoenix area. So, yeah.
And then you moved from Arizona out to California then.
Yeah, around 2001, moved out to LA. I wanted to get into entertainment. Didn't know exactly how I was going to do that. So, did some odd jobs, extra work, did a little student acting, and then eventually got a job in publicity. So somebody told me, listen, if you don't know what you want to do, if you get into publicity, it touches everything. So you might find an avenue or, something that really appeals to you that you can get into there. So, and somehow I never left. So I've been a publicist at different studios for the last 15 years or so.
Okay. Right on.
So was there a big shock when you moved from Arizona to California as far as
Huge
the
shock.
diversity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a memory. I mean, it's embarrassing now because I've lived here for so long, but I remember we went out to Santa Monica to the 3rd Street Promenade. It's an outdoor shopping center. And we stepped out of the parking lot and I could not believe how many Asians there were. I thought it was, I was my girlfriend at the time. I asked her if it was like an Asian day or some kind of Asian celebration going on at the mall, because I just never seen that many Asians in one place in Arizona.
I felt the same when I moved out to California. Yeah. I remember bringing it up to my friend who was also Caucasian, and we went to a party and I was like, this is weird. You are the minority now, not me. It was like, yeah.
So was moving to California the first time that you really started to think about or broach maybe Korean culture or just even Asian American culture specifically. Something you wrote in your form was that growing up, you just wanted to fit in, you just wanted to be white. And I think that's something that I really resonate with, because that's a piece of my story that really sticks out to me when I was growing up, was like I wanted to be white, prayed to be white. And it took me a lot to get over that. Even going to college, even getting into more diversity, I still was really resistant to kind of Asian culture, but it wasn't because I was really necessarily surrounded by a lot of it. So, did California change that, and being surrounded by other Asians and Asian Americans start to change that internally for you, like that drive to want to learn more?
It did, and it brought me a lot more awareness about it. But to tell you the truth, and it's something I haven't really come to terms with until like the last year or so. I didn't feel Asian until literally a couple years ago, and me I mean, we can get into it, but doing my birth family search, and it just feels crazy to talk about now, but I would walk down the street and feel like a white guy. I remember hearing some of your guests talk about when you would refer, it might have even been UKG, when you refer to Koreans, it's like they, or like they like to do that. It's like, well, dude, you're Korean too. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, I'll do that too, but sure, whatever. So it started me on that journey for sure. I didn't have any exposure to Asian, other Asian people. I mean, except for until I went to college, and I remember even I was excited. I joined the Asian American Cultural Association at the University of Arizona, and I was all psyched. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And, everyone was friendly, but I didn't fit in there because I wasn't Asian.
Yeah.
I looked the part. I was asked to join their basketball team, but I wasn't Asian,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like anyone was excluding me. There was no like plot against Chris, McLaughlin, but I just didn't feel comfortable hanging out. So I left. And then I think like you, Nathan, like joined a fraternity. So
I always think that's interesting to hear about adoptees who have went to college and joined like the Asian American Association or whatever, student association, and their experiences. I feel like it's either one, it's never really like super bad where it's like I'm being ostracized and singled out because I'm adopted. But it's either kind of your experience, Chris, where just never really feeling like you fit in, no matter how friendly everyone was, or like, oh, okay, this is where I should be right now, and kind of going in that direction. I just find that really interesting. The really almost duality that kind of occurs within our community when we find ourselves in that situation.
Yeah, I think it is reflective of some of the experiences that we have growing up. Like for me, I had the privilege of meeting a lot of people from Asia, not a ton of Asian Americans, but a lot of people from Asia, right? And so, where I might feel more comfortable going into like a Korean like immigrant church here, I would feel very lost, I guess, if I went into like an Asian American church, because there is that like lack of knowing how to interact with that level of blended identity that I'm like, ooh, I don't know, but yeah, so it's interesting. All that to say, I think it just kind of depends on your own comfort with Asian people and like those cultures, and like if you've been exposed to it and you feel like you can like hang with that, you're like, okay, yeah, maybe. But then like if you're not, then you're like, this isn't for me. It's kind of like when you walk into actually like to use a church example, it's like when a group of white people go to a black people church and they're like, oh, we definitely have something in common, but we don't belong here. This is, I feel like so we just kind of like back away slowly into the bushes, you know what I mean, like
Right.
that classic Homer Simpson
The Homer
meme.
Simpson.
So,
Yep.
Yeah.
yep.
On the same page.
So yeah. So that's interesting. I have a question, and I want to ask it, and I feel like it's putting the cart before the horse. So, Chris, how about you jump into your birth search and what sparked that? Because I'm really curious to hear your journey Yeah. So fire away. What started the birth search and all
Yeah.
that?
I as I'm getting older, I'm like questioning my memory. I'm like, are these things correct? So I had to talk to my mom and do some fact checking. But um, I felt like growing up, I never was curious about my birth family. I was never curious about my birth mother. My family was my family. Like I just didn't. I never felt like a longing or something was missing. And I asked my mom, I'm like, is this right? Did I ever ask you about that? And she's like, no, you're right. You didn't bring that up. And it really wasn't until like 2014, 2015 when somebody sent me a link to Dan Matthews' documentary. And that like opened up my eyes. It was like the first time I even thought it was possible to do a search to find your family. I mean, it just seemed like a crazy miracle, and also that he got all that footage, like just like from a production standpoint. I'm like, how did you film this?
I know.
But
what was the budget for this?
It was the first time that I even thought of doing it. And, I'm somewhat ashamed like to say that, but it just never occurred to me. Like my parents were my parents. So, I mean, meeting Dan at the event, a couple of weeks ago, I mean, was just meeting you guys, meeting him. It just blew my mind. So, but, that's what started it. And then it's actually kind of a funny but not so funny story. I was getting a routine physical, because I was expecting my first child. And, I'm adopted. So I go in and like, they always ask for your like medical history. Do you have any diabetes, hypertension, anything? And it was just some dumb joke I'd always make. Like, well, I don't know. I'm adopted. I have no idea my family history. McLaughlin, and this doctor was Asian, and she did not think that was funny at all. There was like no, like the air was sucked out of the room. And she said, if you have the ability to find out more about your, family history, you probably should. And I was just like, yes, of course. Why wouldn't I do that? And that was literally the thing that started me on the journey. And probably later that week, I went on the Holt website. You fill out an application and you just start that process. And, they got back to me. They send a lot of documents that you read. They try to prepare you with, what you should expect. And I was all in. And I mean, like, I think, Nathan, you might have spoken about it one time about how it took you a little bit to get all the information together. It was a little similar in my case, but once I submitted it, it was in. Mm-hmm. And the process happened really quickly after that. Like, I think it was 2017. I submitted all my information, and I mean, you basically you're asked to write a letter to your birth mother, and they translate it and they send it via mail or telegram to your parents' last known address in Korea. And which in my mind, I just like, how's this going to work? This is crazy. This is like, they're going to find somebody, who used to live somewhere, The
post office doesn't keep mail forwarding for that
35 years ago. But I'm telling you, they tracked my family down, and it was on my birthday, and I got a phone call from someone at Holt, and they're like, we got bad news. It turns out your birth mother passed away. And I mean, it's still hard now. Just give me a second. I think the toughest thing is just the finality of it. It's like, I'll never hear that perspective, why I was given up from my birth mom. Yeah, it's rough. So after after I found that out, it was tough. But they're like, all hope is not lost. Just rewrite the letter to your birth father and we'll send it away. I'm like, easy enough. Literally wrote it that night, sent it back to them and didn't hear anything. Nothing at all. And it's funny. I mean, this is just like a side note, but I think it's important for adoptees who are considering doing a search because, hold on a second. I think it's important for adoptees who are start doing this search to know that you just never know who you might meet who's going to help you in this searching process. And I mean, I don't want to make it into some kind of fate or I don't know prophecy or something more than it is, but there were a chain of coincidences that happened to me that I can't deny. So I just on this side note, I went to a friend's going away party, and at that party I met a guy whose wife was a Korean adoptee, and she, I connected with them, told them, I was going to go start my search, and they introduced me to a person who used to work with Holt in Seoul. And I started connecting with them, talking with them over Facebook. This person lived in Australia. And, I kept them up to speed on this journey and what was going on. And after I sent that first letter and I didn't hear anything, I mean, it'd been 6 or 7 months. And, this contact, my friend was just like, send another letter. I'm like, well, I already sent one. I don't know. She's just like, just send another letter. What are you doing? Send another letter. And I sent the letter in December of 2017. And in mid 2018, I got an email from Holt and they're like, we made contact with your birth family. And it was just I mean, I felt it was like an out of body experience. I felt like I was watching a movie of a guy who found his birth family in Korea. It didn't feel like it was happening to me. I mean, I sat down on the couch. Yeah. My wife and I are reading this email together. It was just incredible. And what happened is my birth father has hyperthyroidism. He is legally blind. He can't see, so he didn't see the first letter. And then my oldest brother, it turns out I have 2 older brothers. My oldest brother found the second letter and was like, what the hell is this? Immediately contacted Holt and was like, yes, let's connect. Let's connect. And the funny thing is my oldest brother, he remembers me. He's 6 years older than me or so, but he remembers me. And my birth parents dropped me off at the adoption agency, came back and basically said that I was dead, that I died. So he thought I was dead.
Damn.
Wow. So all this time they thought you didn't exist, except for that letter was the first moment that they realized that you were still around.
Yeah, it was a shock. It was a shock to them. I mean, my middle brother, 2 older brothers, one's name is Jaewon, the middle is Youngwon, and my Korean name's Kuwon. But they didn't know I existed at all. So in January, I got the letter. We started connecting. They started sending me photos, and literally in March of that year, I was in Korea having lunch with them. So it happened very quickly. I was ready to go over there. I was ready to meet them. I was ready to start this new chapter.
Do you keep up with them now?
Yeah. We usually about every week or so, sometimes multiple times a week. We message each other on Kakao. I use Papago to translate, and then Kakao to send the messages.
Me too.
Yeah, you were telling me about Papago. We gotta get
if you guys don't know, Google Translate does not translate.
It's horrible.
It's awful. But Papago, you can actually type in and speak how you would normally speak, and it will translate it pretty closely. Yeah, so we've been using that. My brother's wives have learned English, and they are pretty fluent. I have not learned any Korean, so shame on me.
But so that's how you guys communicated when you met them in that trip over there?
Yeah, my oldest brother has a really good friend who speaks, perfect English, who grew up with him in Seoul, and he hung out. He took time off. He took like a week and a half off his job too.
Wow.
Hung out with us and translated, throughout the dinners and the meetings, and so yeah, it's
That's just amazing.
Incredibly gracious and generous with his time as well. So. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Jae Young.
Jealous of that. When I met my family for the first time, we didn't have any translators, so we used Papago because there's a speaking function in it where you talk into it and then it translates, and then you reverse it, and then they speak back in Korean and it translates in English. And I would say that was about, 75% accurate. So there was multiple times when somebody would say something and the other person just had this blank stare on their face and just couldn't understand it. But for you to have, a translator there and actually get more information quicker and more accurately, I think that's amazing. I really wish I had something like that for my first meeting.
So when you went over and reunited for the very first time, were you able to meet your birth father as well?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I met him. I met my two older brothers a couple times, and then they arranged a dinner where I met my birth father. Yeah, it was a great meal, a great dinner. I sat right next to him with my oldest son, who at the time was like a year and a half old, and it was emotional. I didn't feel like that. I don't know. I didn't feel like that connection with him like I did with my brothers.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. What's the similarities in look? Do you look like your brothers or your father?
Oh man, I mean, like with my brothers, yeah, it's clear that we are siblings for sure. The first lunch we had after we met at Holt, there was a social worker who, guided our conversation. And then my brother took us out to lunch, and we went to a nice restaurant, sat down in this room, and I'm sitting across from these guys who are complete strangers. We don't speak any English. I mean, and I'm just looking at them and with my one brother, our eyes are the same, and my other brother, his nose is the same. And then both of my brothers, we have like similar chin, and then the hairlines are exactly the same. And it's just, it was incredible. And again, I felt like
weird.
Yeah,
I was watching a show about three brothers who met up and, 15 feet in the air, from a wide angle lens. It was incredible.
Yeah. When I watched the documentary Twinsters,
yes,
there was a moment when they met for the first time. And I remember watching them almost like dissect themselves and like look at each other's height and look at each other's faces to the point where they almost were touching each other. I mean, they're identical twins, so that's a little bit different, but still there was that similarity, that connection, because finally you see somebody that has biological genetics that match, and that it's a weird feeling. I totally, understand where you're coming from when you were like looking at them, because I did the exact same thing. So. And my wife did too. We already talked about that, where they judged our walk. But that was
I remember hearing that. No, I mean, even on a deeper level, it's always being the other, always being the kid who's like not white in the family. I mean, yeah, to know that you have these biological siblings. I mean, I don't know. I can't explain. I can't put in the words like the how enormous like the gravity of that was. Like it's I know I said I didn't feel like there was something missing, but somehow that completed me. I don't know. It was beautiful.
You said that you had the opportunity to bring your son along with you as well. And just because Nathan brought this up, I was wondering, have you at that time, obviously you were very wrapped up in your own journey, but did you notice any similarities between your son and either your father, or like physical features or anything like that? Something I hadn't really thought about, but when you mentioned that, I was like,
I don't think I noticed any physical similarities, but it was interesting because I feel like he was just around the same age as I was when I was adopted.
Sure.
So to like, really put myself in that perspective and position, because when you don't have kids, you don't know anything about kids. You don't know how kids are, how they act. So hearing that, you were 20 months old and like, my parents said, "Oh, we think you might have spoken some Korean, but we don't really know." Like, there's no way they would have known. And then to have your own child and see like, oh man, he's like having full on sentences. He understands 75% of the things we say. He just can't say it himself. I'm like, oh wow, this must have been really traumatic, for me to just be pulled away and then like shipped on a plane over to the United States.
Yeah. So, Chris, I think it's fantastic that you got to meet your family. That is a really cool experience, and for me, I said before on the show that I'm like not particularly compelled to go searching for my family. I'm still not, and I wonder as I continue to listen to these stories of searching, not necessarily even finding, but of searching, I just wonder. I'm like, oh, maybe that's uh, less true and more just self defense. I mean, also I'm allowed to change. Like, there have been times when was definitely like, I want to meet my birth parents, and then I was like, whatever, and then I was like, I want to meet my birth parents, and now I'm like, whatever. So, but I've not, I guess I've not consciously tracked the change in that, But I'm curious. When was the point when you started feeling Korean and thinking of yourself as Korean and feeling Asian American? Was that like wrapped up in meeting your family? Was it wrapped up in the search for your family, or has that developed after meeting them?
It really developed after going to Korea. I mean, meeting them was part of it, but it was after I went to Korea. It just changed me. Like in my mind, I for some reason I thought I'd go to Korea and I don't know, there'd be like a hero's welcome, like there'd be a parade in the streets. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought I would land and it'd be like, I would just tell strangers my adoption story and they would be like, "Welcome home, Chris. Welcome home." And it was not like that. Nobody cared about me at all. Nobody looked at me. So I tried to tell people, like, we stayed in Itaewon when I went there, and I would get food at this local shop and tried to tell this store owner about my adoption story, and she's just like, "Cool, bro, like great story." I mean, she wasn't dismissive, but just like, what do you want me to say? And that was very eye-opening. Yeah, it wasn't until I went to Korea, and then to be honest, over the last year, that I've really become aware of that. And like you guys say, coming out of the fog, it was a combination of that. It was a combination of this podcast, and hearing the people in this community talk about the awakening, talking about, connecting with their Korean heritage. And then honestly, the Black Lives Matter movement last year, and then the, recent violence against Asian Americans that, brought and forced this awareness, on me, and, demanded me to, acknowledge this and come to terms with this, and to, really dive deeper into this, about my Korean heritage and being Asian American and what that means, in this time and space right now. Also, as a parent, thinking about my children, like, how do they exist being Asian in, predominantly white spaces? What is that like? How do I prepare them for that? How do I support them? When is bullying not just bullying? It's a lot to think about, but it's a journey that's really started, after I went to Korea, and then you guys helping, talking about these things on the podcast. It's been really eye-opening and awakening.
Yeah. Would you say that seeing like so many mirrors of yourself and like feeling like a part of the majority, and I think meeting people who, even though they were strangers, they're still family, like having that, like, was that the thing that kind of unlocked it? Was just like specifically just the visual aspect of it and being in Korea, or I don't know. Was it just kind of like a combination of everything?
I mean, I never really felt like I was Asian growing up. I never identified with that. I never would walk into a room and, to be honest, feel uncomfortable. Like I'm the only Asian guy in here. I was always the only Asian guy. I never even thought about it. I remember going, like when I moved up to Phoenix, and like I'd go to a bar and there'd be one Asian guy there, and he would come up and talk to me. I'd be like, "Hey man, what's up?" But it was because he was like,
yeah, he was looking for that.
He was looking,
and you didn't know,
and I didn't know, and I was just always thought it was weird, you know. But now I understand. So it's just really been enlightening to you know, come to terms with that and to acknowledge that and to, you know, see myself as, you know, a Korean American adoptee, and, you know, think about how we can be advocates and active allies, you know, to Asian Americans and people of color.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, I just really resonate with you when you share stories like, you know, even going to the bar, being the one Asian and having an Asian person come up and share that story, like, or to just come up and be connected and just being unaware that that was the reason why. Like that is
completely unaware.
So much of my experience has been that. Like I tell the story of when I was in college and the person came up to talk to me, and she was speaking to me in another language that I did not know, but I could. She was obviously East Asian, and I was just like, "All right, you can either take the step forward finally, or you can continue on in your comfortability." And I continued on in my comfortability, and thinking back on it, it's like not only was that detrimental to yourself, but what harm did you potentially cause her, who was just trying to have a friend, you know, or just have a conversation? Maybe nothing, but just being so unaware of that and just not it taking so long to really start to understand that and unpack that. I just so resonate with you sharing that. And I just feel like our stories have, even though we're of different ages, have really are lined up in a way. That's wild, but yeah.
That's what's been so great about this show, like the community that you guys have introduced me to, that you've helped build, to know, you know, that even at this older age, that I'm not alone, you know, that to hear these stories that are similar to mine, and some of them are exactly the stories the experiences I've been through, you know, it validates you, it supports you, and it's just great to, you know, be part of this community now. I mean, I remember my wife is Vietnamese. She grew up in Southern California. And the first time I brought her back to Arizona, we went into a Target, and she like grabbed my arm and she's like, "We're the only Asians in here in like this whole Target." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's welcome to my life. Like no biggie." Right. But it's funny, her growing up here in Southern California, that was a big deal to her. And to like bring it back, I went back to Ohio, where my family's from, for the first time, you know, in like a decade or so, maybe a little bit less, and it was the first time that I felt like unsafe, you know, in a place where I kind of grew up in, where I went back, you know, that it was the first time I felt like I was, and this is after all the Asian violence, you know, was reported on in like Atlanta and, you know, New York, and I just, you know, distinctly remember walking into the grocery store, the Kroger, and like, man, I'm the only Asian in this grocery store. I don't know, maybe the only Asian in this town. Like, who knows? And I definitely felt like the other, felt like the outsider. First time, you know.
You know, you talk about a lot of relating to stories on our show and everything, and a lot of what you've already said and what you've said in your guest form too was kind of some of the first times I started relating more so to a guest, because a lot of our guests that we've had, you know, have similar stories. They have a couple you know, points that I go, oh, yeah, that, you know, that's happened to me and this has happened to me. But I think for some reason your story really hits me, not only because we're the same age, but also because, you know, I'm not going to say it, KJ, don't look at me like that. But because you did a birth search and also found your family just like I did, you found that you had a brother, you found, you know, it's just, there's so many little similarities. You're in California, which I was in California. And then additionally, you just said you went back to Ohio and felt, unsafe, or just, you noticed it. It was more apparent. There was more awareness. And I felt the same way when I went back to Oklahoma. I almost wanted to like look over my back, and it's not, that I was a target at least I don't think I was. I wasn't, going to get jumped in the grocery store in Oklahoma, but I felt different because of that awakening, I guess. And because the fact that California has such a higher Asian population, that I felt more similar and among, more of my culture and people that look like me. I didn't stick out, but in Oklahoma, I stuck out. And even when I go to Wisconsin, same thing. I feel like I stick out. And my wife said the exact same thing your wife did. She was like, well, we're the only Asians in this airport, or we're the only Asians in this bar. Yeah. And she, again, because she was raised in California, felt a little unsafe. So it's really, hearing your stories, I think is great, because I'm now relating to you much more so than a lot of the guests. And I just wanted to thank you for all of the stories that you've been telling me, or telling us.
Wow, just we're not even here.
Sorry, guys.
Welcome
this
to
is a
the
one-on-one
Chris McLaughlin
conversation
Show.
with Chris and I. Oh, hey, guys. Welcome.
Chris McLaughlin Show
That's
featuring
awesome.
Nathan Nowak.
Yep. You might know him for such things as
The Janchi Show, now defunct.
I'm gonna take over the dictator role.
The Janchi Show.
I mean, I could sit here and listen to Chris talk all day, so I'm happy.
I know I could.
I'm happy to give it up.
So I'm really curious. Like, I definitely also feel the same thing of like when and this is the question that I alluded to previously, right? But like when you go to a place and you're like, oh, dip, I am the only person of color, or I'm one of two people of color, right? And so what I think is interesting is, and I heard this referenced on another podcast, and it's something that I've experienced in my own life. Like, so living in Dallas, I was raised in a pretty diverse area. Like, I also was raised in like very white spaces, but like generally the places that I existed in were fairly diverse. And so it was interesting. Like, I feel like I grew up, and especially then when going to Springfield, where the town was really white, like giving people the nod, like specifically people of color. You know what I mean? Just like, it's the nod, but then in Springfield too, it's like should I know you? And also like, are you okay? You know what I mean? Because like, I think there's a real, and this is, I think, the great travesty of being a person of color in America, and also generally probably just being a woman in America, right? Is that that there is this level of like insecurity, there's this level of like desperate need for community, right? That we learn to live with. It's a new weight to bear. I remember when I was wrestling with everything post George Floyd and all of the racial reckoning that I was going through and that the country was going through, right? I was like, also, I think we were about to move, or like we knew we were going to move. And so I was like looking for a job, whatever. And I was just like, I knew I was going to be okay. And the thing that I told people was like, my mind isn't used to carrying this new burden of being a person of color. And so I'm curious, like earlier you said that you used to walk down the streets and feel like a white person, and now like you really distinctly feel being an Asian American, right? Being a person of color walking down the streets. Was that feeling like a white person? Was that just that you didn't think about anything? Like you had no cares beyond just like basic general life cares? Or was there like, can you delineate specifically like, here's what it means to walk down the street as a white person, and now here's what it means to walk down the street as an Asian American? Like for me, looking back, I wouldn't have ever said, if you had asked me in the moment, I feel like a white person. But looking back, I know that how I felt was how a white guy would feel.
I don't think I thought about it. I didn't think about it at all. It was just, it wasn't until, starting the birth search, and it wasn't until going to Korea and, hearing guests on your show that really, brought this awareness to me. I just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the great privilege of whiteness, right? Is that like, that is, it's that it is. You don't have to think about things quite as much,
Or
So
just
yeah, I was
or
just
just
curious.
familiarity, just everyone looking similar, or just the norm of your culture or other people in your area, things like that. If you're used to diversity, I think in an area, then you might be more used to all of those things as well. But um, to your point too, with the nod, KJ, I do that all the time when I'm at the school across the street and another Asian family walks by and I kind of give them a nod. It's like, yeah, your kid's going here too. Yeah.
Do they nod?
I mean, it's a real thing.
5%.
Yeah, that's absolutely. So I don't know.
think,
It's just so interesting. Sorry, yeah, go for it.
Oh, I mean, I made a comment when we were emailing about, setting this up that, I haven't written any books on adoption or identity. I need to read more. I want to read more. I got that book from Hannah that you guys gave in the Janchi gift package that I started reading. But I do feel like the model minority, myth plays into that in some sense, where it's like, I didn't need to be as, concerned or aware of being Asian, because it's like, oh, you're one of the good minorities. Like you're cool. Chris is cool. He doesn't talk about ethnicity. He doesn't talk about, being non-white. He doesn't talk about like being an advocate. He doesn't talk about us checking our white privilege. Like he's cool. And I fell in line, and that's all I knew. So yeah, it probably was pretty cool to hang out with, because I didn't question or push anyone or call anyone on their bullshit. I'd want to hang out with that guy too.
Yeah, well, it's really like, I mean, it's just a way to fit in, and yeah, I think that you described it that way, KJ, about just acting about your business and just really not realizing. And something I just realized is a way that I did that. So I like to drive, and from the time I got my driver's license till the time I was 21, I was pulled over 9 times. Never, from various reasons, never got a ticket, not a single time. And I never thought about it. In all of those situations, thinking back, I never once was like, thought of myself as anything but a white person that just got pulled over. I never thought of myself as a person of color that got pulled over, or even as an Asian person stereotypically bad driving that got pulled over. I thought of myself as white, and I had literally no concerns or fears because of that. And I knew, because of my prior experience, that I was probably I was gonna get away with whatever I had done to get pulled over with in the first place. Not saying that, and some of those infractions or some of those things definitely not worth pulling me over. Like, they had a thing out, but I had never thought about it as like, I was so comfortable in that I had internalized the whiteness so much that I was wearing it on my skin, on the inside, where that's what I was seeing, but on the outside, obviously everyone else was seeing something else. So I just think that's really sad, but like to just vocalize and articulate. But I'm kind of glad
language
to
that I
say
had
it.
found. Yeah, that's language that I had found in our episode with Diana. Was at least in her queer community, she mentioned a thing called compulsory heteronormativity, right? That like it was just easier, like especially if you're bisexual, or you're not super I don't know, cis presenting, or you are cis presenting, like it's just easier to act like you are heterosexual, act like you're cisgendered, because it's just like an easier way of living. And yet it's some way that like actually denies a part of who you are. It denies, like, you are quietly internally suppressing the truth of who you are, right? And so, Chris, I think it's so interesting that you mentioned growing up you didn't feel like anything was missing, and yet when you met your family felt somehow more whole, right? And that like that's equally, just as much as now we I would say the 4 of us live with the burden of being Asian American and the burden of being people of color in America. um we we live with that. Like, we all as adoptees have this sense of incompleteness, whether or not we know it, and that sometimes The great tragedy is sometimes that will never be filled, but sometimes, we have the possibility of finding that completeness. And not that that necessarily needs to come from finding birth family, although oftentimes it does. That is the thing that makes us feel complete. But yeah, so it's just interesting, like how we think about living truths, living who we are fully living into our identities, and what that means for like the way that we navigate in the world. So
before we move on to our very tasty treats, I just want to ask you one final question. What's next for you on your journey? What is the next step that you're looking to take besides coming on this show?
I would love to start reading the 5 or 6 books I've bought over the last year and have not opened them. I'm starting with the book by Hannah Lee, that The Ones Who Misbehave, that you graciously gifted us. I have a list of other books from previous guests that you guys have that I want to dive into. What was one of your guests' name? It's been great. I've followed a lot of your guests on Instagram and reached out to them.
Nice.
Lauren Sharkey, connected with her. Want to check out her book, and just stop being someone on the sidelines. Stop being someone who's comfortable, existing and watching other people do the work, and dive in. Become part of this. Become an advocate. Become someone who can support, other members of the community. Make myself available, and be part of this. So again, thank you all for putting this community together and helping to promote it and building it.
Thank you for being on it, for listening, for...
Yeah, because literally without you, this would not be anything. If we didn't have guests, this would not have existed. So
that's very
built
true.
on the back of guests.
Exactly.
Built on the back of the community that was already there. I would say I appreciate you saying the community we've created, but I will say that we have been very graciously welcomed into the community that has existed. And I think that's a wonderful part about the adoptee community itself, is that it's even more than just the CAD community that we're all specifically a part of. It's so much more, and that was even that even showed out in LA with other people coming, and I think that's the amazing part of it. So
Always growing.
So glad for you to be able to be here with us and to be on this journey now and to be active. That's what we're all trying to do, is be active. You and Nathan could team up, do some book clubbing, because I know Nathan's got books that he hasn't opened up yet, because he's a notoriously slow reader.
Yep.
And I'll be over here for all the people who are like, oh, being active is cool. I'm more of a sedentary person. So if you want to come be sedentary, hang out with me in my corner, then that's great.
Well, speaking of being sedentary, let's take a quick break and then hop right back in with some sort of snack while we sit down. Roll it in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Janchi Show. We are in the food portion with Chris McLaughlin. Chris, thank you so much for that incredible interview. You honor us with your story and your presence, so thank you. We're jumping in to roasted chestnuts, right?
Something a little different. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we're eating like snacks that are like chocolate, strawberry, chips, and stuff. This one's a healthy chestnut. So, because nuts are good for you, right?
Sure. Pop quiz for my hosts. The Korean, the biggest Korean says urinara.
Urinara.
Do you know what that means?
We.
What? I don't know.
Urinara.
I should know, but I don't.
Family
I'm
nuts.
pretty sure it's our country.
Our country. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. When did we just learn that? Oh, that's uri. Is that URI or
uri is we,
right?
Or our. So uri nara.
Okay.
It was sitting on our Trello board. And you see it all the time.
I don't look at that thing.
Does the one over here say 100%? Is that what that one says?
That is what the Arabic numerals say.
So chestnuts, and I don't know. See, I'm gonna sound completely unaware of chestnuts in general, but as far as I know, chestnuts have a big role in Korean food. Is that correct? Does anyone know? Is anyone nodding or not nodding? Because
no idea.
I say that.
This is why we do the show.
Yeah, I know. So I'm gonna I should have looked more
We
information
are
up about this.
0% experts.
Yeah, see, but okay. So the reason I say that is because at a wedding, when you do like a Korean wedding, there's this one tradition, the payback ceremony, where they throw chestnuts and dates at the bride and groom, and they have to catch them, and it symbolizes how many boys or girls you're going to have. And you see family members just throw little ones or sometimes a big handful, but it's chestnuts and dates. And I've always wondered, what the symbolism of the chestnuts were and why it was chestnuts.
So I did a quick Goog and I typed in chestnuts.
Never say that again.
I did a quick Goog and I typed in chestnuts in Korea, and it didn't say anything about that. It does say that it's a popular street food in both North and South Korea, sold from late autumn to winter by vendors wearing ushanka, which is sometimes referred to as roasted chestnut vendor hat or roasted sweet potato vendor hat.
Okay.
Interesting.
In a set gun bomb. Does that sound right, KJ? From reading it on here, gun bomb, roasted
this
chestnut.
Says matbam.
Oh, interesting.
So this is sweet chestnut. Chris has already opened it and stuck his nose in.
What's the smell? What's that smell, Chris?
Sorry,
That's
was
what
I
I
supposed to
do.
wait?
No.
Apologies.
I smell too. You got to do the smell test.
Whoa,
First.
it is roasty.
I don't know if I like that.
I know that's a little roasty for me, but
I don't know what I thought a chestnut was, but it was not what is in here.
Mine are a little wet, just like they're a little wet. They're dead.
Oh, he's not joking. All right, this has not started out well.
oh, they are. Well, I mean, come on, let's think about it. Oh, goodness. Mine's not, sorry, mine's not just wet. Mine's squishy.
Yeah, so is mine. I think
Well,
that's
how is
supposed
that
to
a roasted chestnut? I thought roasted was like crunchy and.
Well, when did you buy these?
Hey, it doesn't
They don't
expire
until 2022.
Yeah, 2022, so we're good.
Chestnuts roasting on an open
Yeah, there you go.
fire.
Chestnuts roasted. So
All
let's
right, I'm
get
gonna
into
bite
the
into
holiday
this.
mood.
I'm not gonna wait.
And
any longer.
everyone take a
Yeah,
bite.
it's a little slimy.
Take a bite.
Not good. Not good.
I know a spit bucket, but I don't have one.
I'm not even gonna eat the other half of this.
I ate the whole thing.
Nope. I wish I would have. That would have been better than the half bite, I think.
I feel like this is something that
Ugh.
you had to grow up on and you had to have as a kid, and then you're like, these are delicious. Because as an adult, this is not delicious.
I'm about to hold my trash can up to the camera and just dump these out on camera.
But like,
Get
why?
fired from the show.
Why is this the sweet flavor? You know, like what are the other flavors?
Wow.
Ugh.
I don't know. I am savoring it in a way, trying to. I don't know.
Dude, you just gotta
Don't
swallow it
savor
down.
that.
No, I want to know. Like, I want to know why I don't like it.
Can you show me?
There we go. There's our one song of the
I
show.
want to know about these chestnuts that I'm eating.
Oh, I like that.
Tell
That
me
was
more.
fun.
So
Please
I
show
would like to know
me.
why they're not crunchy. Number one,
Something's familiar
Number
about these
two-
chestnuts I'm eating.
the pieces in it. Okay, so a chestnut itself is. I don't know how to. It's not grainy, but it's like.
Mealy.
Yeah, I don't know. It's there's something about it. So one of our desserts, cookies that we've had chestnuts in it, and
Which one?
I want to say it was the.
Well, I
Welcome to-
retroactively hate that sack now.
Was it the Margaret? Was it the
Retroactively.
Margaret cookie?
I don't think so.
I don't remember any
I don't
chestnut
know.
ones.
I thought there was some chestnuts in it, but I've had chestnuts before, but not like this. Again, all the times I've ever had a chestnut, it's been crunchy. This is soft, like the nut was like soaked in the water. So I don't know. I'm eating it just because I want to know why.
I think I'm gonna go in for a second.
Why
will
would
say
somebody do this?
the second bite and the second one is better.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
I almost want to try it,
Patrick's
but I will
eyes got
not.
anime huge in disbelief.
The texture is
Off-putting.
interesting.
Nathan, you want mine? Here you go.
I'm good.
Just throw it out.
No, but I'm a little happy that in a way we've had a lot of, like I said, sweet treats and
Yeah, you brought this
5
upon
out of
us.
5s and everything like that. and finally we were all taking one snack that we're all kind of like iffy on. It's just, hey.
I like how you try to sugarcoat it. We're all kind of iffy on it. No, I'm down on it. 2 thumbs down. I'm going to the basement and putting my thumbs into the ground. That's how much I don't like it.
I wish we were doing a soju tasting.
Oh, I wish I had a soju chaser on this. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, if I had soju with this, I could probably eat all of them. But
I do have a soju.
I do have soju downstairs, but that's downstairs.
Well, it is not something I would snack on frequently. Let's just say that.
We're not even I'm gonna have to cut out all of my audio in this because I've just disparaged this snack. Like, even if I rated it low, I've said too many terrible things. I can't be heard on this episode.
I would like to know why
they're not sponsors. It's fine.
Okay, perfect.
The roasted chestnuts are like, I don't know, sitting in a broth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what the heck is going on with that?
Why
is there
are they
like marinating
it's not a
in here?
broth, but it's
the marinade.
It's moist, like you said, enough to not make them like
this is where the appropriate
make them
moist
dry
is bad.
out. But
Moist
nuts are
means bad.
supposed to kind of be dried out, I thought. So
yeah, see, this package not indicative of what is in the inside of it.
I think we're just going to need to post this this video to YouTube so that people can watch it.
Oh yeah,
that's the only way to get the full experience. So go to our YouTube channel; it will be up there. It will probably be unedited, but you can definitely watch our faces.
You guys need to, and you need to go
upset.
buy them and try them yourself. Oh, what's that?
What's that?
Was that in there also?
I guess this one has the skin on it.
Oh, that was in your thing?
That one looks chocolate covered, though.
I know,
It's
that
not.
got me excited.
It's
probably just the
it's
skin.
not. Come on, Chris, try it. Just try it and tell us.
No, I mean
That
Pop
was
it in your mouth
perfectly
hole.
timed.
the others
Well
are like
timed,
this.
sir.
Oh,
Oh, that
okay.
one looks horrible.
No, that one looks good.
No.
That's like a half chestnut.
I literally put my other half of that one in the bag. That's how much I don't like this.
Nathan, when you were in Korea, did you? Well, actually, KJ, you went to Korea too, right? Did you guys see where they have those worms that are just simmering in a broth, selling them on the streets?
Oh yeah, that's the
The
silkworm
odor
pupa.
wafting.
I did not see those.
Silkworm
I did have.
Wafting.
I had some sea cucumber while I was there, which was interesting because I've only seen those scuba diving.
Well, Nathan, if you didn't want me to be on the show anymore, you did a great job of making me not want to do it anymore. So
You're never gonna let me pick snacks
this
again.
is the end. Yeah, we literally just said it that you were picking all the snacks, and now I'm like, nope, we're gonna have to revisit that scheme.
Hey, but as our exploration into Korean culture, don't you feel better knowing now that you don't like it?
Yeah, I guess I actually feel really bad.
I guess so because now I don't have to. I can just politely decline instead of having to hide my reaction.
I feel like this is not indicative of an actual roasted chestnut that they're eating on the street. I want a street vendor chestnut, and then I will make a final determination.
All right. Well, let's get into ratings right now.
And if you make that
What is your
same
final
face in front of the guy
determination
selling them,
I will face
for
away.
these urinara chestnuts? What's your final determination, Patrick?
0. Dislike.
0.
I couldn't even eat a full one. Normally, I've eaten the entire bag, and I'm going a 0. I dislike this very much. I did not like the way it felt in my hand or my mouth. I did not like the moistness. This is a one-time moist is a bad word. I didn't care for it. I like that it's roasted chestnuts so I could sing the song, the one lyric of that I know. But other than that, dislike. Would not recommend.
I don't know why I find it so amusing that you dislike this. I don't know. I'm sorry.
I just really don't like it.
Because
I'm
you
just
like
sorry.
so much, so many
I know,
other
right?
things, right?
I know.
That's good
First time, only time.
I'm gonna eat another one, just in honor of you not liking them. How
You're
about
gonna make me
that?
throw up.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, Chris. What is your rating?
Is it thumbs up or thumbs down or like out of stars?
out
or-
of
0 to 5.
0 to 5.
5. 0
0
to
to
5.
5.
Chestnuts.
Actually, traditionally we say 1 to 5, but Patrick
True.
created a new
A
floor
new low.
by saying 0.
I told you I was going in the basement and burying my thumbs.
I mean, I guess out of respect, I'll say 2. Like, I don't hate it, but
Wow.
I don't want another one. But
All right. That's respect. I respect that. I respect that answer.
It's growing on me.
Nathan,
Oh.
you're out.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1. Like,
Yeah.
If I was in Korea and someone was like, these are my favorite, you have to have them, I would be like, I will have one and force it down, especially now that I know what to expect. But I'm never going to go seek this out. Hey, Sujona, do you want to try this? No, she's heard me talk about it too much. She won't.
She probably heard me screaming through your headphones.
Yeah,
how terrible it was.
After
all right,
the
Nathan,
glory
bring us home.
review.
What's your rating?
As I ate the second one, give me a second.
What, chasing it with a Coke?
Second one was a little better than the first one. Still, the texture is doing something weird to me. I don't know what it is, but I'm also gonna give it a 1. I'll give it a 1.5.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just because I think it would be okay if it was crunchy. I think it's just
I think
the
you mean
texture.
crunky.
Crunky, yeah. If it was a little crunky version, give me that one. But I like nuts that are crunchy. Sorry,
he just wanted to
weird
say
that
that.
it's wet on the outside, but you eat it and it's dry.
yeah,
Right? Yeah, I did not like that. I will say that. Wait, I forgot what I was going to say. Never mind. Move on.
Excellent podcasting. Okay,
I really had
on
something to
that
say.
note,
Oh,
thank
I'm so
you,
mad.
Chris, so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. If people want to get in touch with you, can they find you? Are your DMs open? How can they build that community with you?
I'm Chris on TV on Instagram. I think it's set to private, but just reach out and I'll follow you back. Let's do it.
All right, there it is. Chris on TV. That's a great handle.
That's you. You've been following me for a while now.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it now. I love it. That's perfect.
You're
Awesome.
like this guy.
That's amazing.
That's really funny.
Literally I apologize if you told me in LA. I was maybe having a little too much to drink.
Probably. Yo,
eat
I will
another
tell that
chestnut.
Incredible.
that Somek really did me in.
No
LA.
judgment out of Janchi, right?
No judgment at the Janchi. Chris, you're the newest host of the Janchi Show. You're filling in for me. I love this guy. All right. Anyways.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you again so much for coming on and sharing your story. You can reach out to us at Janchi Show on all of our social platforms, or send us an email to janchishow@justlikemedia.com if you want to get in touch with us that way, because you want to, say a whole bunch of words. What else do we say? You can support the show at janchishow.com/support. You can join the Facebook group, The After Party, if you want to hang out with other CADs and allies, and hello, my kitchen. And to build community that way. It feels like a year since I've done this. What else do I say? We've probably got some merch
Reviews.
up that's available in the store. Yes, please leave us a review or drop us a like. We don't say drop us a like. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps get the word out. Also, please tell a friend, because that also helps us get the word out by you getting the word out of your mouth hole. I think that is it.
Or you can also, where can people find you there, KJ?
Oh, yeah, right.
Hey
Nathan
there.
always got my back. You can find me at KJ Relke wherever I want to be found on the internet.
You can find me at nnowalk on Instagram.
You can find me at Patrick in the World, also on Instagram.
Yep. And you can find Katie at Janchi Show or at Katie the Cad.
Oh, nice. Yes.
She is running our socials, so it's a great way to get in touch with either all of us or none of us. So, however,
That's actually very true.
That's deeply accurate. Yeah. So there you go.
Deeply accurate.
That is it. We will see you next week. Until then, Janchi Heyo.
And goodbye.